The story begins with a woman asking a man if he really wants to know the truth and if he can trust everything she'll say. The man replies that he doesn't care at all. This shocks the woman, making her realize how dangerous trusting someone can be, because when they betray that trust, it hurts a lot. Despite this, the man asks her to tell him everything. Feeling like he doesn't care about her words, the woman decides to tell him the truth anyway. The scene then shifts to a few days ago. The man seems to be interrogating the woman and inquires if she ever lied, to which the woman replied in negative, but he tells her that her previous reports say otherwise. He then confronts her with previous reports stating she's a skilled and convincing scammer, highly smart and good with words. The report warns him to be careful not to be tricked when talking to her. She tells the man that she has no idea what any of those reports means. With a cryptic smirk on her face, she tells him that she had never lied in her entire life. We then get to know that they are in a ship named Vaiheth, whose destination is Monty Island. The man recalls her courtroom statement about never lying, but she reveals the judge didn't believe her. When asked if she said the same during her arrest, she confirms, believing it unfair to be arrested despite her innocence. The men didn't say anything for a moment, and then asked her for her name. She, with a dark expression, questions why he's asking when everyone knows her identity, to which the guy told her that it's a protocol. She then reveals that her name is Rosen Walker. The man informs her it's not what they have on file. Unmoved, he asks her to confirm the name on the report. Reluctantly, she reveals her name as Rosen Howers, aligning with the information in the reports. The man then starts to read the report, and we get to know that she was sentenced for 50 years at the age of 17. She was imprisoned in Preen Female Penitentiary, from which she escaped after 1 year. She managed to crawl down a cliff and climb the Dobe Mountain with her bare hands. Then she was arrested in St. Vignesh after her 3 months of hiding, sentenced to another 25 years, and transferred to Alcapas, a maximum security prison. After 5 years, she escaped again and was pursued by the Empire Army for a year. It's mentioned she used just a spoon to escape Alcapas, which she confirms, mentioning the struggle she went through to obtain it. But the man cuts her off and tells her to spare the details and just answer his questions, to which she agreed. And we finally get to know that the man's name is Ian Connor. In her thoughts, Rosen reflects on Ian's appearance, noting how good he looks even when he's frowning. She recalls Ian's fame as a war hero, where his face was everywhere during the war. The government used his image in advertisements whenever his plane took off. Advertisement with his face on it. Rain on everyone. Recognizing how easily the masses could be manipulated, Ian, being a handsome young pilot, was a perfect pawn in this orchestrated act. Rosen was brought back to reality when Ian inquired about her crime. She asked him what crime he was talking about. He tells her that he's talking about the reason she's being sent to the Isle of Monty, the most dangerous prison in the world. She responds to him by stating that it's all because she escaped the prison twice, and she shattered the pride of the Imperial Army. But he tells her he's not talking about that. He asked her why she got imprisoned in the first place. Rosen insists she's innocent, but Ian, following protocol, dismisses her claim, expressing his indifference to her version of events. Rosen keeps persisting that she's innocent. Ian tells her that the criminal always says that they are innocent, but the truth is that the judges decided that she's guilty. Rosen persists, stating that despite the judge's decision, it doesn't change the truth of her innocence. She believes that ultimately, the truth will prevail. But Ian responds by telling her that he didn't care about her position, emphasizing the need for her to answer his questions, leaving Rosen silent in response to his statement. Just then, a man enters the room calling Ian and asks what he's doing. Ian told the men he's interrogating the criminal. The guy asks him why he has to do this. He replies by telling him that it's a protocol to verify the information of a prisoner's life when they are being transferred. The man tells Ian that he knows that he takes his work very seriously, but there is no need for him to do all the work by himself. He continues by telling him that this time they have the worst criminal among the ones transferred to Monty Island. Upon noticing Rosen, the man is shocked and refers to her as the Witch of Alcapas. He then asks Ian, what is he doing questioning such a dangerous prisoner? Ian asks him if she looks dangerous to him. He tells him that she might look scrawny, but he mustn't let his guard down, as she manages to escape from Alcapas. He tells him that he saw the file he gave him when she was 17. However, before he could finish his statement, Rosen interrupted him and states that when she was 17 she had murdered her husband, Hindley Howers. While trembling, she continued by saying that she stabbed him 36 times. The forensic scientists confirmed that the murder was because of hatred. Even when her husband stopped breathing, they said that she kept stabbing him. But she told them that she didn't kill her husband. She was a good wife and loved her husband. She revealed that it was the doing of the thieves. They were jealous of her husband Hindley, and it was only a matter of time before someone came after Hindley. She further reveals that the cops didn't carry out a proper investigation, and they didn't listen to a word she said. They just threw her away in the prison. Ian, on the other hand, didn't even budge by her remarks and tells her to stop the act. He continues by stating that it makes no difference what kind of wife she was. She was found guilty and that's that. Rosen, with an annoyed expression, thinks that he didn't understand anything even after she cried. Rosen questions if Ian truly believes a slim girl like her could kill a big tall man. Ian responds sarcastically, mentioning that no one would have thought that she could escape from Farron's and Al-Qapa's either. But she did, and that makes no difference. He further tells her that it's not like there's no way to kill someone, because she was a small and weak girl. All evidence is pointed towards her. He tells her that she's lying. He orders the man named Henry to take Rosen with him. Henry instructs Rosen to move, prompting her to wonder where they're taking her. Compared to the guards she had before, she thinks that these guys are quite the gentlemen. She thinks that if it were the prison guards, they would have been already beating her by now. Regardless, guards and prisoners are like a cat and mouse relationship. The moment they let their guard down, she will run away. And when she lowers her guard, they'll catch her. Feeling confident in her ability to seize opportunities and escape, Rosen believes she'll triumph this time too. As they make their way out of the room, Henry asks whether Ian plans to give Rosen a tour of the guests, to which Ian explains that all those aboard the Vice were eager to explore the transformed prison ship, turning it into an exciting experience. Post-war, many significant changes have occurred. Steamships once utilized for military purposes have undergone a transformation, including device ships. The once war-torn vessel now hosts lively parties with colorful decorations and lively music. Its destination shifted from a site of conflict to the supposedly serene Monty Island, now a place where prisoners face their end. Henry draws a comparison between himself, the commander, and Rosen, highlighting their different roles during the war. He reflects on their efforts to save lives while Rosen took her husband's life. He admonishes Rosen for not appreciating her escape from execution despite causing manpower and financial losses. Rosen, in turn, warns Henry about being too loud. Ian intervenes, advising Henry not to dwell on unnecessary emotions, and apologizes to Rosen for his subordinate's impoliteness. As they proceed, Henry warns Ian not to drop his guard, suggesting that the prisoner might be a witch. Commander Ian Connor leads Rosen to the balcony, intending to show her something. She admires the view, finding it unexpectedly beautiful. She reflects on never expecting to witness such a sight in her lifetime. Ian then shares a rumor he heard with her, which is that she escaped Al-Qapa's by digging a hole with just a spoon. Out of curiosity, he asked her if she really did go down the cliff naked, leaving her with no idea of the kind of answer to give him. Ian continues, stating that there are stories suggesting she used magic in her previous escapes, shocking her. He reveals that the last successful escapee from Al-Qapa's 36 years ago was rumored to be a witch, leading people to believe the same about Rosen when her escape made the news. In disbelief, she questions why she would live in such a manner if she were a witch, asserting she wouldn't have been caught in the first place. She refutes the claim, pointing out inconsistencies, such as why she would be shackled or on board a tourist ship if she possessed magical powers. However, Henry remains unconvinced, cautioning Ian not to trust her, accusing her of habitual lying. He points out that it is written in the data sheet that she lies a lot and almost fooled the entire nation by pretending to be innocent and wept throughout the first trial. In response to Henry's accusations, Rosen, visibly annoyed, assures him of his luck, claiming that if she were truly a witch, she could have silenced him already. She mentions passing a magic discrimination test as proof, challenging his intelligence to comprehend her words. Henry attempts to intervene angrily, but Ian halts him. Ian orders Henry to release Rosen and warns him to control his emotions, threatening to report him if he misbehaves again. He addresses Rosen as the infamous escapee and the supposed witch of all Kappas, asserting that her truthfulness doesn't matter. Ian then presents some crucial facts. She's a convicted prisoner sentenced to life on Monty Island, and he's been tasked to take her there. He also emphasizes that while there have been escapes from all Kappas, no one has managed to escape from Monty Island, regardless of being a witch or not. Upon hearing this, she takes note of the fact that he's unkindly trampling on her. She contemplates whether there's a lifeboat or a handcuff key hidden somewhere nearby, and realizes that if she intends to escape, she must do so before they arrive at the island. However, her hopes rise when Henry returns with a tray of meat, assuming it's meant for her. Yet, her relief is short-lived as Ian throws the meat into the sea, using it as a decoy to test the sea's appetite for prey. He provocatively suggests she can become a monster's snack by using a lifeboat and the keys attached to his waist, hinting at escape but warning against the consequences. Disillusioned by Ian's tactics, Rosen concludes that he's not the gentleman she initially thought. Disheartened, she retreats to her cell. Inside, another inmate, Maria, inquires about her conversation with Ian Connor, showing an interest in him. Maria tries to persuade Rosen to establish a connection with Ian to aid their escape, but Rosen is skeptical, believing the commander might not be the sole obstacle in their escape plan. As Rosen shares the details, it becomes evident that Maria was more deserving of the title Witch of all Kappas than Rosen herself. When Rosen arrived at all Kappas, Maria was already a notorious prisoner, known for her previous escapes. Despite this, after catching Maria's attention, Rosen became a leader among the inmates, making her prison life somewhat easier. She recalls how Maria's intense desire to achieve victory, almost as if her goal was to defy the pride of the Imperial Army and vanish. Continuing their discussion about Commander Ian Connor, Rosen assures Maria that she won't give up and they'll find a way to escape. Maria offers Rosen a cigarette and begins talking about the commander and his role as a pilot. Intrigued, Rosen questions why Ian is in this position, as it doesn't align with typical Air Force duties. Maria hints at a possible injury that led to Ian's current role. This surprises Rosen, as she remembers Ian appearing physically normal during their prior interactions. They continue pondering ways to gain Ian's attention, even though Rosen is at a loss regarding her own escape this time around. Lost in thought, Rosen reflects that even if they manage to acquire the key, attempting to cross the treacherous sea in a lifeboat without a thruster engine would be a nearly impossible mission. As Rosen contemplates the complexities of escape, she realizes the futility of attempting it without proper resources. Lost in despair, she envisions starvation and the challenges of navigating the treacherous sea without adequate means. Amidst these distressing thoughts, a sudden noise startles her. As she prepares to shout in response to the disturbance, only to discover it's caused by a small child. Curious about the child's presence, Rosen questions her and advises her to leave for safety reasons. However, the child, introduced as Leela Leville, seems undeterred. Rosen recognizes the surname, linked to Henry, and queries if the child is related to him. Confirming the relation, Leela assumes Rosen knows her uncle and asks if she's his friend. Rosen insists the child shouldn't be in such a place, not meant for children. However, Leela's eyes well up with tears as she explains she came to meet Rosen, as promised to her friends. This revelation surprises Rosen, wondering how a child could know about her in such a place. As Leela shares her reason for seeking out the infamous escapee, the Witch of all Kappas, Rosen is stunned. Leela claims her grandfather is the ship's captain, which enables her to see Rosen, although others doubt her. Impressed by the child's determination, Rosen congratulates Leela for finding her and introduces herself as the renowned Rosen Walker. Meanwhile, on the balcony, Henry complains of a headache, prompting Ian to suggest it as a break. Ian informs Henry that the ship is headed towards Monty Island and will eventually turn back. Ian mentions that the scenery is so beautiful that people pay money to sightsee, but Henry interjects, saying it should be more isolated. They continue their discussion, exchanging teasing remarks. During their conversation, Henry recalls that the Witch of all Kappas mentioned she hailed from Riordan. This revelation shocks Ian, who seems worried. Henry attempts to reassure him, mentioning that Rosen's origins might involve a crime from the outskirts of Ryerton. As Henry shares his insights, Commander Ian acknowledges his awareness of Rosen's origin. Henry explains that he shared the information precisely because he knows Ian is informed, hinting that Rosen's past might relate to Ian's superior. Ian reveals that Riolton was his childhood hometown, where he attended the military academy and had his initial flying experience. He also witnessed the city's devastation in a blast during the war. Henry remarks on Rosen's seeming luck in escaping death by leaving Riolton. However, Ian disagrees, emphasizing that she's a prisoner facing a death sentence. Shifting gears, Henry mentions his impending journey to Monty Island with Sir Connor's escort, possibly aiming for fame, prompting a knowing look from Ian, confirming the destination. Meanwhile, Rosen engages in a lengthy conversation with Leela. The child, surprised to meet Rosenwalker under these circumstances, inquires about the accuracy of newspaper reports, particularly regarding Rosen digging a cave with a spoon. Rosen affirms the truth behind these details, comforting the child's curiosity. Rosen, sensing Leela's curiosity about her alleged magical abilities, proposes a deal. She'll demonstrate her magic if the child answers her questions. Initially hesitant due to her grandfather's warnings, Leela eventually agrees. Meanwhile, Maria quietly observes their interaction while smoking. Rosen proceeds to reveal that her question is not a difficult one, but merely a matter of curiosity. During their conversation, Rosen begins by asking if Leela knows Commander Ian Connor. Leela innocently describes him as her uncle's boss, a war hero, and an exceptional pilot. Continuing her inquiries, Rosen probes into the commander's romantic life, confusing Leela about the purpose of these questions. Undeterred, Rosen asks if Ian is an affectionate person, leaving Leela puzzled by the term. Maria intervenes, explaining the meaning of affectionate and providing illustrative examples to clarify the concept for Leela. The perceptive Leela interprets the expressions Rosen explained as manifestations of love, noting that Ian doesn't seem romantically involved with anyone, but perceives him as a good person. After Leela answers all her questions, it's time for Rosen to fulfill her promise of showing Leela magic. She performs a trick with a coin, claiming it will turn into gold at sunset. Rosen warns Leela to keep this magic a secret to maintain its power. Later, Maria approaches Rosen, questioning her about the magical abilities displayed during the coin trick. To Maria's surprise, Rosen admits it was merely a simple sleight of hand trick, contradicting her earlier claim of never lying. Their argument escalates, revolving around Rosen's alleged witchcraft and their ongoing plans to escape from their current situation. Their conversation leads Maria to share rumors about witches escaping to a mysterious refuge called the Island of Witches. Rosen acknowledges hearing whispers about this island being near Monty Island, where these witches have seamlessly blended in with the locals. Rosen emphasizes to Maria that reaching the Island of Witches would be an immense challenge, highlighting the island's ominous reputation. Later, Maria discusses the idea of assuming tragic personas to gain Leela's sympathy and hopes Rosen will employ a similar strategy with Commander Ian Connor. Reflecting on her past success by associating herself with a hero, Maria acknowledges that these superficial tactics might not work with Commander Ian Connor. She notes his unique blend of soldier, pilot, and hero traits, contrasting sharply with her own character. Meanwhile, outside on the balcony, a memory from Ian's past flashes through his mind momentarily before he refocuses as Henry suggests they return inside. As they head indoors, Henry expresses disbelief that a war hero like Ian has to escort the Witch of Alcapes. Ian responds, stating they had no choice but to follow orders. They discuss Ian's position for a while longer before Henry advises him to take a break and consider life beyond uncertainty, prompting Ian to reflect on life after the war. Ian reminisces about passing the Arc de Triomphe and the adoration he received while in uniform. He questions the authenticity of his happiness and wonders about his facial expression during that momentous occasion. Henry notices the Ian's somber mood and tries to uplift his spirits, reminding Ian that as a commander, making difficult choices is inevitable and he can't protect everyone. Henry also advises Ian not to dwell excessively on Rosenwalker and assures him that he doesn't have to face everything alone, albeit in his typically indirect manner. However, Ian insists on handling things by himself and urges Henry to focus on his own recovery. Lost in his reflections about the specific instructions regarding Rosenwalker's escort to Monty Island, Ian summons her into the room without prior explanation. Unbeknownst to him, Rosen had been present all along, but his preoccupation with his thoughts had prevented him from noticing her. Rosen's sudden question interrupts Ian's thoughts, causing him to snap back to reality. He decides to continue by discussing the shark stock, aiming to dissuade her from any thoughts of escape. In response to Ian's discussion about shark stock, Rosen discerns the implication and confronts him, questioning if he's suggesting that considering an escape is a foolish idea. Ian responds, emphasizing the fine line between a fool and a hero, suggesting they don't fall on the worst side of that line. He cautions against overthinking, as it might hinder courageous action. Acknowledging Rosen's bravery, Ian speculates about how some may perceive her as a dark hero. Curious, Rosen asks if he views her as a fool or a hero, prompting Ian to label her as a full-fledged jailbreaker by his standards, advising her to refrain from violence. As their back-and-forth dialogue continues, Rosen observes Ian's favorable responses to assertiveness rather than tears or pitiful behavior, and his lack of interest in nonsensical talk. As the questioning session draws to a close and Ian prepares to leave the room, Rosen realizes this might be her sole opportunity to capture the commander's attention. Just as Ian is about to open the door, Rosen makes a bold statement. Rosen boldly declares to Ian that he too is a fool, referencing his earlier comment about the thin line between a hero and a fool. She characterizes herself as a dark hero while labeling him as the sun hero, both classified as fools for focusing solely on victory in the midst of war. Questioning why a distinguished war hero is escorting a mere prisoner, Rosen's words visibly agitate Ian, prompting him to raise his voice, demanding her silence. Determined to provoke a reaction, Rosen persists in speaking, prepared for any consequences, having experienced pain before. To her surprise, Ian finally responds with firmness. He acknowledges the sacrifices made by comrades who lost their lives defending their homeland, emphasizing their willingness to protect the Empire's people despite potentially being forgotten by history. Ian chastises Rosen for her insults, stating that people like her, who only know how to flee, might not understand or appreciate such sacrifices. Commander Ian perceives Rosen's attempts to provoke him and gain attention. He advises her to cease her games, dismissing her attempts at deceit as shallow and transparent. Despite his earlier anger, he now suggests that seeking sympathy from him is futile. Ian divulges that while there's no practical need for physical restraints on the ship, the symbolic chains she wears represent the weight of her sin, the act of taking a life. As Rosen tries to say more to provoke him, Ian interrupts, expressing his clear understanding of her character. With no further room for discussion, he instructs her to leave. Annoyed, Rosen exits the room, contemplating whether the commander expects her to remain frustrated after their interaction. Outside the room, Henry notices a change in Rosen's demeanor. He observes that she's braided her hair and freshened up, acknowledging her altered appearance. Intrigued by her transformation, he curiously inquires about her latest tactics and wonders about the nature of her actions. Rosen replies with a mischievous smile, informing him that she washed her face like a human being, using the drinking water which she saved. Henry, still somewhat skeptical, remains convinced that she's playing a game of pretense. He tells her that no matter what her trick is, it won't be enough to change the outcome. Unbothered, she leans in and asks him if he has any idea what kind of trick she's planning. As Rosen teases Henry and engages in playful banter, she notices Leela walking alone, sparking concern about leaving the child unattended. Observing Leela's resemblance to Henry, Rosen casually remarks on the girl's cuteness, catching Henry off guard. He's startled by Rosen's knowledge of his niece and grows increasingly suspicious of her, fearing she might possess abilities that could harm Leela. Despite Rosen's denial, Henry remains convinced she might be a witch and sternly warns her against causing any harm to her niece. Just then, Rosen notices Leela is crying. She thinks if something goes stuck in her throat, she quickly tells Henry to bring a doctor. Henry was in panic as he knew there wasn't a single doctor on board. Rosen, on the other hand, yells at him to wake up, as Leela will die if a doctor won't come. Desperate, she pleads with Henry to release her right away, assuring him that she knows how to help, and without hesitation, he releases her and she rushes to Leela's side to save her. At that moment, The commotion attracts the attention of others from nearby rooms, and they rush out to see what's happening. They witness Rosen's heroic efforts in saving the child. After successfully rescuing Leela, Rosen embraces the crying child, overwhelmed with the realization that she was able to save her. Henry snaps out of the state of shock he was in and rushes towards Leela, inquiring if she's okay. Meanwhile, a lady who came out after hearing all the noise said she wasn't able to see clearly, but she saw a woman holding onto a little girl and giving her first aid, and it also seemed like the little girl had something stuck in her throat. On the other hand, Rosen discovers that it was because of a tiny piece of candy that Layla was almost losing her life. She comes to the conclusion that a single bullet and a single piece of candy can both end the life of a person. She thinks it's not just soldiers who can end the lives of people. While sitting on the ground, she asks Henry how her skills were and if they were useful. She even says that if he's thankful for her actions, then at least he should give her some water so she can wash herself with it. Alternatively, he could sneak in a lot of food for her in her prison cell without his superiors knowing. After talking, she notices there's no response from him, but as she's just about to make another request, the commander replies, saying he'll fulfill all that she has requested. However, she didn't know that he has been the one she has been talking to all along. She looks up to him, her curiosity evident, and asks him why he's there. But before he could say a word, the captain strides into the room to check on his granddaughter, Leela. Realizing the presence of the captain, Rosen quickly changed her words, saying she was just joking when she made those earlier remarks. She emphasizes that she wasn't particularly hoping for anything in return for heroic actions. To say the child, Ian tells her that it's not difficult to reward her with the things she had asked for. He adds that the Empire's army always ensures that individuals are compensated for their deeds, even if they are prisoners destined for imprisonment on Mani Island. They follow the same principle. Rosen, caught off guard, asks him if he's truly going to allow her to wash up, seeking confirmation. He affirms this, but mentions that she will still have to be cuffed while doing so. She questions the possibility of washing herself with Cassin, perplexed by the idea. The commander reassures her, promising to arrange for a servant to assist her. He even teases her, suggesting that in another life she might have been a princess. Just then, the captain arrives at the scene and yells at Ian and asks him who taught him to act like this. He further asks him if he's going to treat the child's savior by chaining her like that. Rosen was shocked by the captain's sudden sympathy towards her. As Ian wants to say something, he was interrupted by the captain, who tells him to free Rosen from chains as they are surrounded by the sea, to which Ian responds that it's impossible. The captain asks him why he can't, to which Ian tells him that it's because of imperial law. As Ian and the captain were in a heated argument, Rosen seems to be enjoying every bit of that situation. The captain then states that the laws of land don't work on the sea, and continues by telling him on Lake Behes his words are the absolute law. Ian didn't say anything after the captain's statement, as he seems to be at a loss of words. Captain further continued by asking him if he didn't have an ounce of flexibility, and how he's treating Leela's savior. He tells Ian to at least allow him to unchain Rosen as a token of gratitude, as he wants to express his gratitude to her for saving Leela from impending death. Connor argues by stating that she's a prisoner, but the captain tells him that she's a savior before a prisoner, to which Ian corrects him by telling him that she was a prisoner before she was a savior. This deeply angered the captain and he starts hitting him with his stick. Ian tries to calm him by stating that he's just a soldier who's on a duty under the orders from his superiors. The captain then shifts his attention to Rosen. He asks for her forgiveness by Ian's side and expresses his gratitude to her for saving Leela's life. He then introduces himself to her as Alex Leeville. He tells her that he's the retired admiral of the Navy. Rosen thinks to herself, where have she heard of this name? She suddenly remembered the statue of the war hero in the Capitol Square, a masterpiece of the imperial capital. The statue of Alex Leeville marching towards the enemy. Alex then tells her that he's glad that she recognizes him. Rosen thinks that there's no way she wouldn't have heard about him as he is an old war hero. Even an uneducated person like her know about who he is. She can't believe that the legendary war hero is standing in front of her, as there are no similarities between him and the war hero. She then introduces herself as Rosen Walker. Alex reveals that Leela is his one and only granddaughter, and if it weren't for her, she would have died today. He then asks her if she wants to wash up and eat. She responds by telling him that she would be grateful if he can provide a bath and some meat in her prison cell. But he tells her that he can't do that for her. She was a little taken back by his remark, Alex continues by telling her that treating her granddaughter's savior like that is something that will never happen in the Levo family. Their honor won't allow such a thing to happen, he said. But Rosen, on the other hand, finds the current scenario somewhat familiar and thinks that he didn't have to go that far for her. Alex then inquires to Rosen if she is free the next day and asks her if she's willing to join them for dinner. Rosen tells him that she have to decline his offer, as it seems burdensome just by imagining it. But Alex tells him not to worry as she won't be placed in a grand position. It'll only be a simple dinner with his family. Rosen thinks everything is fine. It's him who's the big deal. Just then, Ian intervenes and tells Alex that this is too excessive for her. He continues by calling her a murderer, a witch, and a lowly person, and further tells him that this kind of treatment is not suitable for her. Rosen senses that Ian might launch a hateful speech towards her. She quickly accepts the Alex invitation, stating that she can't refuse his offer since she was always hungry and can eat even with her hands shackled. But Ian expresses his worries that she might run away, to which Rosen tells him that she can't run away anyway, as he had already shown her the terrifying things that live in the sea. Ian didn't say, as he was shocked by her unexpected statement. She reflects on her past when she used to admire Ian Leaflet and was addicted to him. She had high hopes for Ian, envisioning him in a certain way. However, every time she discovered he was different from her idealized image of him, she felt disappointed. This constant disparity between her expectations and reality made her furious and unable to tolerate the situation. She wishes that Ian had remained an idealized figure in her fantasies rather than disappointing her in real life. Despite her desires, life continuously leads her down a path she does not want, steering her away from her idealized fantasies. The next day, she wakes up in a luxurious room, bewildered because it's not her usual prison cell. Despite her confusion about the unfamiliar place, she decides to brush off her concerns and plans to go back to sleep. As she's about to rest, someone enters her room and asks if she slept well, prompting her to question their identity. The person introduces themselves. A maid advises her to freshen up before the water gets cold. Two maids approach her, causing her to feel puzzled about their intentions. They explain they're there to assist her in changing clothes, even though she insists she can do it herself. Despite her protest, they proceed to undress her. Later, Rosen is seen enjoying a warm bath when suddenly she recollects that the captain had invited her to dinner. She accepted the invitation due to her dissatisfaction with Ian's reaction. After that, she was guided to the princess room, and she was flabbergasted after seeing such luxury. She realizes that it might have been a long time since her last bath, making her contemplate her past self-care routines. A maid interrupts her thoughts out of curiosity, questioning whether she is truly a witch. Rosen questions the maid about her belief, to which the maid responds that Leela was proud to have met someone she considered a witch. Rosen shares with the maid that children usually accept things as they are, and the maid agrees with her observation. A maid offers to add more warm water to Rosen's bath, but Rosen declines, stating that she's okay. However, the maid insists, mentioning that it would help relieve Rosen's fatigue, revealing that the captain specifically instructed them regarding her needs. Rosen reflects on the warmth of the bath, acknowledging that the longer she stays in this comfort, the more harshly she'll feel the cold outside. She doesn't want to get used to this warmth. For her, this warmth is nothing but a luxury. She didn't know better in her past, but it's different now. She won't run around and fall for someone's warm hand like a fool like she did in the past. Rosen begins feeling sleepy due to the relaxing warmth of the bath. Just then, she hears a commotion outside. The maids are instructing Henry not to head inside, but Henry replies by telling them that he's here for surveillance. The maid counters him by stating that it's Connor's order. Despite the ongoing argument, Rosen suddenly emerges from her bath wrapped in only a towel. She confronts Henry, asking if he has something to say to her, surprising everyone present with her half-naked arrival. The maids quickly move to cover Rosen as she emerges in a towel, and Henry closes his eyes in an awkward moment. Henry acknowledges being a man, but Rosen seems unfazed by this detail. He then requests the maids to step outside, claiming he needs to convey confidential information to Rosen based on Connor's orders. The maids hesitated a little to leave Rosen alone, but Henry told them that he was here to deliver Connor's order. As the maids went outside, Rosen annoyingly asked him what he wanted to say, as he appeared out of nowhere. She further asked if he's here to conduct a body search, to which Henry responds in negative and questions her if he looked like a pervert to her. Rosen teasingly tells him that given the situation, if he's not a pervert, then what he's doing here. Visibly agitated, Henry hides behind a screen, and Rosen returns to her bath. She questions Henry about the message he needs to deliver privately. Henry tells her that it's about Leela. Before Henry can explain further, Rosen interrupts him, expressing her apology, but also asserting that he's a completely useless uncle. Henry finds himself unable to argue or counter Rosen's statement, as he acknowledges the reality of the situation, feeling the weight of her comment about his role as an uncle. She asks Henry about Leela's condition, showing concern for her well-being. Henry informs Rosen that Leela was examined by a doctor the previous night and is currently alright. She questions Henry if he's really a pilot. Henry proudly mentions shooting down 50 enemy planes. Curiously, Rosen asks why someone who has achieved such feats as a pilot seems to display fear or hesitation in certain situations, prompting her to question why he appears to be afraid despite his accomplishments. Henry discloses that he had an older sister and a brother-in-law who were Leela's parents. He then asks Rosen if she is aware of the bombing incident in Ryerton, to which she confirms. He continues by asking her about her whereabouts that day bombing happened. She tells him that she was in the middle of the jailbreak at that time. She was still inside Alcapas long after she heard the news. While inside Alcapas, Rosen overheard someone mentioning that Ryerton had disappeared, likely referring to the aftermath or consequences of the bombing incident. Henry discloses that his older sister, along with Leela as a newborn, were in Ryerton during the bombing incident. He expresses deep regret, admitting that despite knowing his sister and Leela were in that city, he was unable to prevent the bombing from occurring. Although Rosen feels it has nothing to do with her and doesn't want to hear anymore, she still asks Henry why he couldn't stop the bombing. Henry recounts the fateful day when they spotted an enemy squadron during their flight. Faced with the squadron dividing towards Malona and Ryerton, the commander had to make a choice to save Malona. He tells her that he didn't blame Ian for his choice, as it couldn't be helped. It was unavoidable. After that, he flew for the rest of the war. He thought he had overcome everything. After the war ended, Henry felt something within him was broken, causing a fundamental change in his persona. He acknowledges not feeling like the same person and no longer considers himself a pilot. Although he's grateful that Leela is present with him, Rosen bravely asks Henry if he resents her for surviving as a prisoner while his innocent sister perished in Ryerton. He admits feeling resentment towards her. She tells him that he has every right to detest her. People need a villain to point their fingies at, just as much as they require a hero. Henry apologizes for his earlier behavior, confessing to the incident where he threw fish into the sea. She asks him if it's his idea, to which he replied in positive. He acknowledges that without her intervention, Leela wouldn't have been saved, expressing heartfelt gratitude for rescuing his niece. Meanwhile, outside the room, the maids struggle with their curiosity, conflicting with Commander Connor's orders. Despite the temptation to peek, they ultimately obey the directive to leave Rosen and Henry alone, yet the curiosity remains. Suddenly, Ian makes an appearance, striding toward the room. In a playful and teasing manner, Rosen turns to Henry and questions the sincerity of his words, asking if they are just empty expressions. Henry, not wanting to ruin the mood, earnestly reassures her that he genuinely appreciates her. However, Rosen isn't content with mere words of gratitude. She wants him to prove his sincerity by giving up the keys to the chains that have been used on her. With a few words designed to play on Henry's mind, Rosen manages to persuade him into agreeing. He remarks that it's not like she'd survive even if she had a lifeboat. Rosen signals for Henry to come closer and whispers something into his ear, leading to a subsequent argument between the two. Ian bursts into the room and witnesses the proximity of Henry and Rosen, triggering his anger and dark thoughts. He demands an explanation from Henry about their activities. Overwhelmed with fear, Henry stammers continuously, prompting Ian to order him out of the room before closing the door, leaving an intense and uncomfortable situation behind. Once alone with Rosen, Ian gestures for Rosen to sit and covers her with a cloth, indicating he wants to say something, but struggles to find the right words. After a moment of silence, Ian cautiously asks if Henry had violated Rosen earlier, to which she was deeply shocked. He offers to change the surveillance for her journey and promises to keep Henry away from her. Rosen, surprised by Ian's consideration, questions if Henry isn't his own lieutenant. Ian asserts that if Henry breached her trust, he would no longer be his lieutenant. Rosen points out their respective roles, mentioning her identity as the Witch of Alcapas and his status as a war hero, implying that Henry should be on Ian's side. Ian seems unable to grasp her perspective. Rosen questions Ian about his trust in his subordinates, to which Ian expresses his dislike for these issues, emphasizing that people are multidimensional and having flaws doesn't negate being a good subordinate. Ian, out of curiosity, directly asks Rosen if nothing truly happened between her and Henry. Rosen responds by explaining that she and Henry were merely discussing Leela, and Henry felt awkward expressing his gratitude in front of others, which is why they were alone in the room. She then playfully questions what a prisoner could possibly gain from a guard. To her surprise, Ian accuses her of deceiving everyone with lies, insinuating that she's only interested in opportunities, and implies she's still the same if observed closely. In her defense, Rosen states that perhaps people pretended to be fooled, implying it doesn't matter whether she's good at lying or not. She asserts that nothing she says will change anything, acknowledging his heroism while smiling. Ian questions if she really thinks he's a hero, prompting Rosen's surprise. She admits her admiration for him, revealing that she too liked him because she was a citizen of the Empire and collected his pictures when they fell from the sky. This revelation makes Ian flinch. Rosen jokingly tells Ian that he should know she liked him because he's handsome, saying it with a bright smile. However, she realizes she's bluffing and shouldn't be saying such things, pondering why she's suddenly expressing these sentiments. Rosen concludes by allowing Ian to leave, acknowledging there's no need to keep him there any longer. As he stands up to leave, he informs her that he'll send the attendants back in. On the other hand, Rosen tells him that she'll put the handcuffs back on after getting dressed. But if he's really concerned that she'll escape, he can leave the door slightly open for Henry outside and instruct him to turn around. As Rosen speaks, Ian extends his hand, seemingly offering to help her get up. He mentions being bewildered by her earlier statements and admits they might have something in common, surprising her as she doesn't recall saying that. Despite her protests and requests to let the attendants in, Ian suddenly lifts her up, causing Rosen to question the action and feeling like she's being treated as baggage. Ian expresses doubts about Rosen, feeling it was a mistake to follow the captain's instructions. He reveals his lack of trust in Henry and decides to keep watch over Rosen himself, stating he's the only one who hasn't let his guard down around her. When Rosen questions if he's afraid of her escaping, Ian admits to being afraid of her, indicating his feelings of fear and mistrust towards her. Rosen's question about why he should fear her when he's in a position of power. He leaves the room with a cigarette, lost in his thoughts. While outside, Ian notices a report left on the table, which he had explicitly instructed someone to burn. He reveals that the newspaper used to be a distraction for him, but after the war, he began experiencing recurring nightmares. In these dreams, he was dragged into dark waters and couldn't go back to sleep once awake. Each time he awoke from the nightmare, he'd read the newspaper without truly comprehending its contents. His eyes consistently fixated on the word Ryalton, a city ruined by choices he made. Surprisingly, his name wasn't mentioned in the article. Instead, a witch, a fabricated scapegoat, replaced his identity in the media, government, and military narratives. Since the day he encountered the witch's magic, he became fixated on finding out about someone named Rosen Howards. Oddly, Rosen seemed to mirror his own life, but suffered from terrible luck. This sparked numerous thoughts in his mind, drawing strange similarities between his own existence and that of this prisoner. He began reflecting on himself, even blaming aspects of the situation on his actions. He questioned why the witch was seen as wicked, and why he was hailed as the hero who saved the country. His thoughts were interrupted by Leela's arrival, carrying a bunch of toys. The commander asked about the toys, and she explained they were meant for Rosen. Later, when asked why she brought them to him, she said she thought Ian Connor might know Rosen's preferences. Their conversation continued, and Leela noticed a newspaper on his desk. She mentioned that someone tried to dispose of it earlier, but she brought it back since it belonged to him. He queried Leela about when she became aware of this, and she replied that it's a common trend these days to collect articles about Rosen. She was seeking a newspaper to create a scrapbook with Rosen's articles, but the ones thrown away by him had all been clipped out. Moreover, someone had already cut out Rosen's picture, causing Ian to feel frustrated and prompting him to conceal his face in annoyance. Frustrated, Ian beckoned Leela closer and questioned if she had shared this information with anyone. Reassuringly, Leela affirmed that she hadn't uttered a word to anyone, not even her uncle. Ian then implored her to promise that she would keep this as a secret in the future. In response, she asked if he would get into trouble if the truth came out, to which he affirmed by explaining that she was the prisoner and he was responsible for transporting her to the prison. Left with no other option, Leela promised him that she wouldn't disclose this secret to anyone. She assured him that he didn't need to worry because everyone believed he hated Rosen. However, Ian corrected this notion, stating that he didn't particularly harbor hatred towards the prisoner. It was merely his duty and he couldn't afford such feelings. Additionally, Rosen had saved Leela, altering his perspective. Despite being rude before, he wouldn't act that way anymore. To his surprise, Leela asked if he liked Rosen, to which he replied that he neither hated nor liked her. The adorable Leela sought permission to like Rosen, explaining that Rosen took a person's life but also saved hers. Through her reasoning, she concluded she could like Rosen, and then asked him to choose which toy Rosen might prefer. Ian finally chose a teddy bear, and Leela revealed she had something to give him as well, the lucky coin Rosen had given her, believing he needed it more due to his sleepless nights. Ian, concerned about where she got the coin, warned her not to take things from just anywhere, yet promised to keep it safe. He then urged her to return as mealtime approached. Leela then inquired about her uncle's whereabouts, mentioning he needed to change his clothes as well. Ian informed her that her uncle, Henry, was watching over Rosen Walker and that she was bathing. However, Leela revealed she had seen him earlier, indicating he wasn't at Rosen's room door. Realizing this, Ian tried to suppress his emotions, despite feeling increasingly angered. Later, Henry explained to the commander that he and Rosen had a brief conversation when Ian unexpectedly interrupted them. In the dressing room, a maid, deeply admiring Rosen's outfit, encouraged her to step out, confident everyone would be pleasantly surprised. However, Rosen doubted her mere presence would cause such a reaction. The maid insisted Rosen was stunning, but Rosen remained doubtful of the impact. Eventually, after much persuasion, Rosen stepped out, leaving Henry and Ian shocked by her transformed appearance. As she emerged, both men stared in silence, prompting Henry to inquire about her identity. Stunned by the remarkable change, surprised by their reactions, Rosen noticed their departure from their usual attire, speculating if it was due to the captain's presence. Henry offered to escort her, but Rosen, expecting teasing or a push, hesitated. Upon closer inspection, she found Henry attractive, despite not being her usual type. However, their moment was interrupted by the commander sternly forbidding Henry from getting within a meter of Rosen Walker, motivated by jealousy. This unexpected command led Henry to question the commander about the unresolved misunderstanding from before. Ian conveyed that the misunderstanding had been addressed, but he still held a sense of distrust towards Henry. Curious about Ian's reasons, Henry sought clarification. Ian cryptically explained that he had warned Henry previously about the dangers of excessive favor or hostility, hinting at his concern that Henry might be getting too close to Rosen Walker. Innocently, Henry pressed for more information, asking if he wasn't trusted and if Ian believed he might defy orders and release Rosen. Ian admitted his uncertainty, especially regarding their interactions in the bathroom. Henry clarified that Rosen had only asked for the meal menu in the bathroom as she had a particular craving. She requested Henry to convey her meal preferences separately to the chef. Seeking confirmation, Ian questioned Rosen, and she corroborated Henry's account, even praising his honesty. As the conversation continued, the captain and Leela made their entrance. Excitedly, the little girl expressed her happiness about Rosen accepting their invitation. Rosen reciprocated the excitement, genuinely pleased to see Leela. Leela complimented Rosen, likening her to a princess and praising her beauty. In response, Rosen warmly returned the compliment to Leela. However, Ian suddenly ordered Leela to stay away from Rosen, citing it as dangerous for her. Tearfully, Leela sought refuge behind Henry, while everyone else present found her incredibly endearing except for Ian. As Rosen observed Ian's harsh behavior towards children, she pondered that the only person who might oppose him aboard the ship was Captain Alex. Alex, visibly upset, questioned Ian's constant suspicion. He then apologized to Rosen and assured her that the meal would soon be ready. Rosen then suggested that it would be nice if her handcuffs could be removed during mealtime. The captain reprimanded Ian for his harsh behavior towards Rosen, but Ian clarified that he couldn't remove her handcuffs due to violating imperial rules. Alex then asked Henry to assist Rosen with her meal, but Henry seemed unable to help and suggested asking one of the attendants instead. Observing the situation, Ian intervened, offering to assist Rosen during the meal since Henry couldn't do it. He reached out to her, holding her hand, and inquired if she objected to his offer. Strangely, Rosen sensed a different intensity in Ian's gaze compared to their initial encounter. She inwardly speculated that his gray eyes seemed to fixate on her more intensely, possibly sharing some resemblance, as he previously mentioned. However, she wondered if it was merely a pleasant delusion, an attempt to escape the grim reality. Despite this, the more Rosen stared into Ian's gray eyes, the more irritated she became. Rosen observed the complexity in Ian's gaze, noticing it lacked the fiery heat of red or the icy chill of blue, making it difficult for her to discern its true temperature. Despite realizing she didn't need to dwell on the meaning behind his eyes, she couldn't help but acknowledge that if she dismissed his unpleasant side, all that remained was the potential for destruction. Snapping out of her reverie, Rosen asked when he intended to release her hand. Quickly retracting his hand, Ian explained he was attempting to pull the chain. This explanation angered the captain, who demanded to know why Ian was pulling her chain and accused Rosen of being complicit in allowing Ian's behavior towards her. Ian vehemently repeated that he genuinely believed he was handling the chain, a fact Rosen acknowledged to herself. Yet, she understood. It held no significant meaning and appeared to be a product of her delusion and misunderstanding. Suddenly, a vivid memory from her past rushed into her mind, feeling more like a fantasy than a delusion, where she unilaterally loved him, dwelling in her own personal reverie. She cursed her lack of composure in this moment, unable to meet Ian's gaze despite her inner turmoil. Meanwhile, Ian persisted in trying to convince her he had no intention of holding her hand. Yet, in her thoughts, Rosen reminded herself that he should not overtly display offense, almost as if he had read her mind after all. In that moment, a memory of a past promise of protection flooded into Rosen's mind, prompting her to assert that she couldn't be deceived by that lie anymore. As they reached the dining room, Rosen's surprise led her to whistle in astonishment, quickly apologizing to the captain for her behavior. However, the captain reassured her that it was all right, noting the opulence of the setting and explaining that such formal dinners were rare for him, especially given the exceptional circumstances. Seated at the table, Rosen couldn't help but notice that no one else in the room was as extravagantly dressed as she was, feeling uncomfortable with the attention on her as a prisoner. As her plate was served, she wondered about the dish she was presented with. However, just as she was about to eat, Henry pointed out that she couldn't eat with her hands still handcuffed, and mentioned that the captain hadn't given the signal to start eating. Rosen was surprised, questioning if the captain had signaled earlier. Henry clarified the distinction between being offered food and being allowed to begin, especially as only soup was being served. This luxurious meal was an entirely new experience for Rosen, and she pondered why Henry suddenly treated her with such nobility despite her feeling out of place. Meanwhile, Ian called her name with a spoonful of food, catching her attention. Leela noticed the seemingly friendly interaction between Rosen and Ian. Ian, realizing Henry's previous disregard for etiquette in battle, hastened to explain to Henry that this situation was different and emphasized that he wasn't attempting to embarrass Rosen Walker. Ian instructed Henry to remain silent and move away due to the prohibition against being within a 1-meter radius of Rosen, which meant he couldn't sit at the table. As Ian continued to feed Rosen, she inquired if he wouldn't eat, to which he mentioned he would handle his own meal and advised her to eat. Bluntly, she asked him for more meat, surprising him as he noticed her rugged appearance contrasted with her surprisingly delicate touch. Rosen seemed to relish the food, ordering various dishes and shocking others at the table. However, Ian cautioned her to eat slowly to avoid stomach upset, which annoyed her, and she glared at him. When she asked if he didn't want her to eat all the food herself, Ian clarified that she shouldn't interpret his words that way. He didn't mean it like that. Observing Ian's facial expression, Rosen asked why he was frowning, and he candidly replied that his face naturally appeared that way. Perplexed, Rosen noted that Ian engaged in conversation with her, contrary to his typical behavior of ignoring her. Moving on, he asked if she was a nurse, to which she answered negatively. He then questioned where she acquired her first aid knowledge, as such skills were rare in the country. Ian, out of curiosity, asked Rosen if she used magic to save Leela. With a cunning smile, she remarked on the tendency for people to label a woman accomplishing remarkable deeds as a witch, clarifying that she wasn't a nurse. Instead, she learned from her husband, Hindley, who was a doctor, albeit not a very good one. She mentioned that while she herself wasn't a witch, her husband's other wife, Emily, possess supernatural abilities. The revelation created an awkward silence at the table, making Rosen wonder if it was due to the sudden realization that she was a murderer. Unexpectedly, the captain diverted the attention by asking about Rosen's age, mentioning how tabloids speculated she might use magic to hide her age, to which she confidently asserted she was 25 years old, as reported in the Imperial newspaper. The captain then asked at what age she got married. He further asked if her marriage was decided by her parents, leading Rosen to reveal she was an orphan, shocking everyone. Henry slammed the table, visibly angry, questioning how a mere 25-year-old could have married, and inquiring about her husband's age. Rosen explained that her husband had already passed away, further stunning everyone at the table. Amidst the tense conversation, Ian intervened, urging them to stop discussing irrelevant matters and focus on their meal. He cautioned about Leela's presence at the table, but Leela insisted it was okay because she had also seen the newspaper article accusing Rosen of her husband's demise. Despite Ian's warning, Leela continued, suggesting that it was possible Rosen didn't commit the crime she was accused of. Ian tried to convince her of Rosen's guilt since she had been convicted, but Leela believed Rosen's denial, as Rosen herself had told her she didn't do it. Leela posed a poignant question. Why didn't anyone listen to Rosen? Ian and the captain reiterated their stance, acknowledging that while Leela owed her life to Rosen, it was undeniable that Rosen had been responsible for ending her husband's life. Tearfully, Leela expressed her distress, feeling alone and unsupported if no one believed her like they did for Rosen. Moved by Leela's innocence, Rosen approached Ian, politely requesting him to stop pressuring her, assuring him that she would quietly eat. However, Ian questioned her about the coin she gave to Leela. Rosen clarified that the coin wasn't originally hers. It belonged to Leela. She borrowed it momentarily as a joke and promptly returned it. She discerned Ian's underlying motive in probing her about the coin, realizing he aimed to validate her reputation as a liar by scrutinizing her previous action. Leela intervened, defending Rosen by asserting that the coin was a symbol of good luck, but Rosen asked her to stop, indicating she was okay. Privately, Rosen noted how she viewed children's innocence as a potential advantage she could exploit. Later, a maid approached Rosen, asking if she could clear the empty plates and serve the next course, to which Rosen agreed, curious about the upcoming lavish meal. Ian, noticing Rosen's patience, inquired if there was a particular dish among those on the table she would like to eat. Rosen requested Maria Berry, and Ian obliged, serving her the requested dish. As Rosen began to eat, Ian was about to ask her something, but suddenly noticed drops of blood coming from her mouth. Panic ensued among those present, fearing she might be bleeding profusely. Unbeknownst to them, this was all part of Rosen's scheme to avoid returning to prison. Determined to save herself, even at the cost of self-inflicted harm, she manipulated the situation to make Ian drop his guard. She collapsed to the ground with a loud thud, losing consciousness.